Hello, welcome to the Southern Bible Thumper channel. For this upload, we will be reading Numbers chapter 24. And when Balaam saw that it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, he went not, as at other times, to seek for enchantments, but he set his face toward the wilderness. And Balaam lifted up his eyes, and he saw Israel abiding in his tents according to their tribes. And the Spirit of God came upon him, and he took up his parable, and said, Balaam, the son of Beor, hath said, and the man whose eyes are open hath said, he hath said, which heard the words of God, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. How goodly are thy tents, O Jacob, and thy tabernacles, O Israel! As the valleys are, they spread forth, as gardens by the river's side, as the trees of lign aloes, which the Lord hath planted, and as cedar trees beside the waters. He shall pour the water out of his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters. And his king shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. God brought him forth out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of an unicorn. He shall eat up the nations, his enemies, and shall break their bones, and pierce them through with his arrows. He couched. He lay down as a lion, and as a great lion, who shall stir him up? Blessed is he that blesseth thee, and cursed is he that curseth thee. And Balak's anger was kindled against Balaam, and he smote his hand together. And Balak said unto Balaam, I called thee to curse mine enemies, and behold, thou hast altogether blessed them these 3 times. Therefore now flee thou to thy place. I thought to promote thee unto great honor, but lo, the Lord hath kept thee back from honor. And Balaam said unto Balak, Spake I not also to thy messengers, which thou sentest unto me, saying, If Balak would give me his house full of silver and gold, I cannot go beyond the commandment of the Lord, to do either good or bad of mine own mind. But if the Lord saith, that will I speak. And now, behold, I go unto my people. Come therefore, and I will advertise thee what this people shall do to thy people in the latter days. And he took up his parable, and said, Balaam, the son of Beor, hath said, and the man whose eyes are open hath said, he hath said, which heard the words of God, and knew the knowledge of the Most High, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Sheth. And Edom shall be a possession, Seir also shall be a possession for his enemies, and Israel shall do valiantly. Out of Jacob shall come he that shall have dominion, and shall destroy him that remaineth of the city. And when he looked on Amalek, he took up his parable, and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his latter end shall be that he perish forever. And he looked on the Kenites, and took up his parable, and said, Strong is thy dwelling place, and thou puttest thy nest in a rock. Nevertheless, the Kenites shall be wasted, until Ashur shall carry thee away captive. And he took up his parable, and said, Alas, who shall live when God doeth this? And ships shall come from the coast of Shittim, and shall afflict Ashur, and shall afflict Eber, and he also shall perish forever. And Balaam rose up, and went, and returned to his place, and Balak also went his way. So to summarize Numbers chapter 24, Balaam saw that God was pleased with him, blessing Israel, and inspired him to begin this, it says here, parable, but he's speaking uninterrupted for longer than a sentence. So this is sort of like in the other chapter, so chapter 23. So in chapter 23, Balaam took up discourse where he just starts speaking and blessing Israel. He's talking uninterrupted. Well, he's doing that again in this chapter. And his spoken word goes like this. He says his own name, Balaam, Beor's son, whose eyes are open, has said. He heard the words of God and fell into an eyes open trance. Israel's setup is lovely. the same way that valleys, river gardens, line aloe, and cedar trees are lovely. Israel shall pour out his waters, and his seed shall be in many waters. His king shall be higher than Agag. Israel shall be exalted or celebrated, and God bought them out of Egypt. In verse 8, he says, Israel has the strength of the unicorn. Israel shall eat his enemy nations. Israel shall break their bones, pierce them with arrows. Israel is like a lion. Blessed are those who bless him, and cursed are those that curse Israel. In verse 10, Balak got angry because Balaam is supposed to be cursing Israel, but he's blessing them, and he smote his hands together. I wasn't willing to commit to doing that the whole few sentences there. Also, the Bible doesn't say how many times he clapped his hands, if he clapped his hands through each syllable. But he did smite his hands together out of anger. Verse 11, King Balak says to King Balaam, I was going to promote you to great honor, but the Lord kept you back from your honor. King Balaam says, I told you I'll only say what God tells me. King Balak asks him to leave, and King Balaam says, that's fine, but not before I tell you what Israel is going to do to you. And then he goes into another speaking, and he says again, Balaam, the son of Beor, whose eyes are open, who heard the words of God and knew the knowledge of the Most High and saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into an eyes open trance. Israel will smote the corners of Moab. They will possess Edom and Seir. Out of Jacob will come he that has control or dominion, and will destroy him that remains in the city. Verse 20, Amalek was first of nations, but will perish forever. Verse 21, the Kenites' dwelling place is strong, but they will be wasted and carried away captive until Ashur. Who shall live when God does this? Then the ships will come from Shittim to afflict Ashur and Eber. And then Balaam went home. And so, some points that I would like to go over. Verse 1. Okay. So in verse 1, Balaam saw that God was pleased, so he did not go back and ask God for further specific instructions. So the highlight here from verse 1, Balaam knew that it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, but so far, God didn't talk to him the way that he talked to him explicitly in the previous chapter. So up until this point, in Numbers chapter 22, Balak, the king of Moab, feared Israel's capacity after observing their flawless victory over two neighboring kingdoms. He asked another king, King Balaam, to curse Israel, as King Balaam's blessings and curses are notably effective. Balaam serves the same God of Israel, and God told him to only bless Israel. Balak does not accept Balaam's answer and was persistent. So far, Balaam has had Balak build 28 altars and sacrifice 42 animals, hoping that Balaam would then curse Israel. In Numbers chapter 23, Balaam would have Balak build the altar, make the sacrifice, then stand beside it while he went to a different location, seeking God for an answer and what to say next. So this is what he's been doing in the last chapter. So chapter 23 ended with King Balak making the last round of sacrifices. And so we open up with, after making the sacrifice, Balaam then is going to seek God for what to say, but God already communicates approval. So the end of this, or the other part that I wanted to highlight, He did not go to look for omens, resort to divination, and the King James Version, it says seek enchantments. So all this is saying is it's just the same thing. He wasn't seeking God for approval. God communicated the approval, so he didn't have to seek God for any more information. And so these words, enchantment, and then some of these words like enchantment, omen, divination, sometimes even like prayers, curses, rituals, because these are all terms that imply supernatural energy, knowledge, sometimes it is used interchangeably when we're talking about faith. So divination in this sense is not uh, something other than God, sorcery, but all these can be used. It's just some of these terms like sorcery, divination has a connotation, but the act is kind of the same as it. The action is the same. It's just certain terms have a different connotation. Okay. The next thing, verse 7. So I was really, when I saw the line, his seed shall be in many waters, I needed to sort of just read through this and look at the other translations for comparison. And thinking about this, there was no running water. Everyone had to find a well that produced clean water. So what King Baalam is saying here, he's blessing Israel that they will have abundant water. They will have no problem finding water. So it's a blessing. Then we have Agag. And so when I looked up the term Agag, it says here a dynastic name. It's a general term for ruler. So in some parts of the world, you'd have king. In Egypt, you'd have Pharaoh. And in the part of the world that we're in now, we have Agag. So in this verse, he's just saying the Israelite king will reign supreme over all kings. And then lastly, in verse 8, well, I guess it's not lastly, but for this section, unicorn is used in the King James Version, but we compare it against all the other verses, we see wild ox. So I looked up, just wanting to know. I assumed that this was a translation error, but that I just typed it up anyway because I wanted to see if there were any other animals who had been referred to as unicorn. And I came across this one, Re'em. And when I looked up what the term Re'em is, it's wild ox in the Bible. And you can check it. We go to the interlinear Bible and we look at verse 8. And the interlinear is the closest translation to the original format, which was written in Hebrew. And we have a wild ox here. So even though the term unicorn was used, that was just, it helped me to think of this as slang. That's another part of dealing with antiquated literature, because there's every group of people have slang or just misusing words. People misuse words and you have to read behind them, read different translations to confirm that you're getting the most accurate message. The next, my favorite part of this chapter is the smiting of hands out of anger, because we don't know how many times, if it was one for every syllable, or if it was just a one, or if he spoke some. I don't know, it says his anger was kindled, then he smote his hands before he started to speak. So I think that's pretty clear. When the clap occurred. Yes, yes, yes. Verse 11, we have King Balak angry. The king Balaam did not curse Israel after he made all these sacrifices and dug all these altars to still not get what he asked for. Out of frustration, he rescinds his offer to promote King Balak to great honor. And he says, your Lord kept it from you. The first point, Balaam himself is already a king, and Balak is the only one who would benefit in this situation. Balaam was minding his business, and Balak is the one who needed assistance. So rescinding the offer that Balak didn't need is not really an effective. It's not really effective. This is an example of a leader using a promotion as a tool or a weapon to produce an outcome. Balaam, the godly man, was a king, having financial stability, or even having excess, what would be considered excess. Because sometimes when people have a lot, sometimes it will be viewed as having excess. But if Balaam didn't have his own money, his own honor, that might have been a way that King Balak could have tempted him against God to curse Israel, even though God told him not to. But because he had his own status, he was a king himself, he was really doing it to just help out. He wasn't motivated by what he could get from Balak. The word promotion also made me think about work, jobs. I mentioned when I was talking about the ineffectiveness of King Balak to be a leader of a kingdom and he can't put his own curse together or get someone from his own kingdom to help him. Just because he couldn't fulfill his job responsibility as a leader didn't mean that position was usurped from him. And so, by that same token, shortcomings or not being able to fulfill certain responsibilities is not always alone the only deciding factor in getting things on earth. And it's just information to always be aware of, because it's easy for someone who got something, it's easy to think that it's easy to get things. And it isn't for everyone, because as we can see, the promotion that he was going to get, it was only going to be if King Balak did what he asked. It wasn't going to be just because he was capable. So King Balak is the example of an ungodly leader. He does not respect godliness. He just views religious beliefs as a tool he can benefit from. When he thought he could earn a cursing for Israel, he was on board to build the altars and comply with Balaam's requests. But when he didn't get his way, then he reminded Balaam about the honor and told him he wasn't going to get it because God was the reason. Well, that's all that I have for Numbers chapter 24. The next upload will be Numbers chapter 25.